The candles are out. The Alpine wind is screaming through the open window. And on the bed, Elizabeth is cold, not from the night air, but from the black grip of the monster. This is the night Victor Frankenstein lost his soul. It was 8 o'clock when I arrived. I threw the servants out of the way and rushed into the room. They thought that I trembled on account of the dreadful catastrophe which had just taken place, but I was not trembling from terror. Great God, why did I not then expire? Why am I here to relate the destruction of the best hope and the purest creature of earth? She was there, lifeless and inanimate, thrown across the bed, her head hanging down and her pale and distorted features half covered by her hair. Everywhere I turn I see the same figure, her bloodless arms and relaxed form flung by the murderer on its bridal bier. Could I behold this and live? Alas, life is obstinate and clings closest where it is most hated. For a moment only did I lose recollection. I fell senseless on the ground. When I recovered, I found myself surrounded by the people of the inn. Their countenances expressed a breathless terror, but the horror of others appeared only as a mockery, a shadow of the feelings that oppressed me. I escaped from them to the room where lay the body of Elizabeth, my love, my wife, so lately living, so dear, so worthy. She had been moved from the position in which I had first beheld her, and now, as she lay, her head upon her arm and a handkerchief thrown across her face and neck, I might have supposed her asleep. I rushed towards her and embraced her with ardor, but the deathly languor and coldness of the limbs told me that what I now held in my arms had ceased to be the Elizabeth whom I had loved and cherished. The murderous mark of the demon's grasp was on her neck, and the breath had ceased to issue from her lips. While I still hung over her in the agony of despair, I happened to look up. The windows of the room had before been darkened, and I felt a kind of panic on seeing the pale yellow light of the moon illuminate the chamber. The shutters had been thrown back, and with a sensation of horror not to be described, I saw at the open window a figure the most hideous and abhorrent that I had ever beheld. A grin was on the face of the monster. He seemed to jeer, as with his fiendish finger he pointed towards the corpse of my wife. I rushed towards the window, and drawing a pistol from my bosom, fired, but he eluded me, leaped from his station, and running with the swiftness of lightning, plunged into the lake. The report of the pistol brought a crowd into the room. I pointed to the spot where he had disappeared, and we followed the track with boats. Nets were thrown in, but the creature was not to be found. After passing several hours, we returned hopeless, most of my companions believing it to have been a form conjured up by my fancy. After the appearance of the demon, I felt a sudden calm succeed to my horror and misery. I left the house, the servants following me with looks of wonder and a degree of alarm. I walked with a quick pace, and we soon arrived at a cottage. I do not know how the night passed, but in the morning, when it became light, I went to the court of justice and accused myself as the destroyer of Clerval and his wife. "You are all mistaken," I cried. "I am the cause of this. Had I been wise, I had not come." The magistrate listened to me with kindness and attention. "You are young," said he, "and, though not a native of this country, you must feel the misfortune which has befallen you severely. Your account is very extraordinary, and perhaps you do not altogether believe it yourself. I confess that I do not perfectly understand you. You have described circumstances which must have presented themselves to a disordered imagination, and whose truth I am doubtful of." I told him that he knew nothing of what I was relating. Misery had made me a fiend. I was not the only one who had suffered. My family had been visited by the most dreadful calamities, but I felt that I must not be believed. The magistrate looked at me in disbelief. He listened, but did not believe, and so I left him. My father, when he heard this, was seized with grief. He could not live under the horrors that were accumulating around him. The springs of existence suddenly gave way. He was unable to rise from his bed, and in a few days he died in my arms. What then became of me? I know not. I lost sensation, and chains and darkness were the only objects that pressed upon me. Sometimes, indeed, I dreamt that I wandered in flowery meadows and pleasant valleys with the friends of my youth, but I awoke and found myself in a dungeon. Gloom succeeded, and then came despairing visions of what had happened. Then came a time when misery gave way to despair. I was alone. Elizabeth was dead. My father was dead. William was dead. Justine was dead. Henry was dead. I had no friend, no relation, no hope. I became a miserable wretch. But then a new feeling rose in my heart, revenge. Alive to every new impression, capable of every fine emotion, I was yet delicate and flexible as water. But when I thought of all those deaths, and of the fiend who had caused them, I vowed eternal vengeance. I vowed that I would devote myself to the destruction of the being to whom I had given existence. I called on the spirits of the dead and devoted myself to this pursuit. I lived in daily fear lest the monster whom I had created should perpetrate some new wickedness. I felt the fiend close behind me at times. I turned to flee and was met by the scorn of those who heard my wild ravings. From this time, hatred and vengeance have occupied my heart. With these feelings, I pursued my undertaking with unremitting ardor. Filled with this idea, I set out from Geneva. The monster, as if he knew that I had commenced those measures to bring him to justice which he dreaded, changed his course. I waited for him near Geneva. I watched the shore and saw him. He avoided me and set sail for the Black Sea. I followed. He drove me to the north, and I followed like a shadow. I have been led hither by a spirit of vengeance. He fled, and I have followed him across half of Europe. Even now I am beset by the cold and the darkness. But I will not surrender. He has taken everything from me. He shall not escape. Sometimes the peasants, scared by this horrid apparition, informed me of his path. Sometimes he himself, who feared that if I lost all trace of him I should despair and die, left some mark to guide me. The snows descended on my head, and I saw the print of his huge step on the white plain. To you first entering on life, to whom care is new and agony unknown, how can you understand what I have felt and still feel? Cold, want, and fatigue were the least pains which I was destined to endure. I was cursed by some devil and carried about with me my eternal hell. Yet a spirit of good followed and directed my steps, and when I most murmured would suddenly extricate me from seemingly insurmountable difficulties. Sometimes, when nature, overcome by hunger, sank under the exhaustion, a repast was prepared for me in the desert that restored and inspirited me. The fare was, indeed, coarse, such as the peasants of the country ate, but I will not doubt that it was set there by the spirits that I had invoked to aid me. As I still pursued my journey to the northward, the snows thickened and the cold increased in a degree almost too severe to support. The peasants were shut up in their hovels, and only a few of the most hardy ventured forth to seize the animals whom starvation had forced from their hiding places. The rivers were covered with ice, and no fish could be procured, and thus I was cut off from my chief article of maintenance. The triumph of my enemy increased with the difficulty of my labors. One inscription which he left was in these words: "My reign is not yet over. These are my trophies. Follow me. I seek the everlasting ices of the north, where you will feel the misery of cold and frost to which I am impassive, and there you will curse the hour of your birth." I could have wept with vexation and misery, but at length I perceived a moving sledge in the distance, and had on board a sledge and dogs which I exchanged for those that had failed. By so strange an accident I received strength and pursued my enemy with renewed vigor. I cannot lead you into a long description of all the feelings which bore me onwards. I was sustained by a kind of ecstasy.